Welcome to Beyond My Crisis. I'm your co-host, Ron Rosnick, and I'm with Vivian Gaspar. Today, Taryn Abrahams is here with an extensive clinical and mental health background with over 24 years of experience in corporate America. Taryn is focused on educating people and companies about sexual harassment in the workplace through education and bystander intervention training. She hopes to create an honest forum to tackle this crisis in the workplace. Thank you, Taryn. What do you say about that?
So what comes to mind is #MeToo and Time's Up. These are two current examples on the momentum that has been created around this issue in the workforce. Sexual harassment has been around since men and women have worked together. And, this has been going on for years and years. And what we are finding is that even with human resources in place and with laws and regulations in place, it is not only not improving, we are starting to find that it's actually getting worse. I mean, all it takes is turning on the television and you hear a new case.
Can you give me some statistics about this?
Sure. So according to EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, their statistics show that last year alone, of the 30% of claims that made its way to their desk, 74% of them, the victim was a woman. So I want to preface that for today's conversation and for your audience to understand that anybody can be a victim of sexual harassment in the workplace.
26% are men, or other, I guess?
Absolutely. So you can be male, female, regardless of sexual orientation or cultural background. So I just want to make sure your audience understands that it doesn't discriminate, but it's majority a female issue.
But in the news, we hear the high-profile cases of politicians or media company presidents doing something wrong, but that's the extreme.
Right.
The reality is everyday people working in the workplace, this occurs.
Absolutely.
How do you define sexual harassment?
Well, so let me go back to one point. 75% of women actually admit to experiencing some form of sexual harassment. So this is an epidemic. I mean, this is a major problem, right?
But maybe men don't admit it.
Perhaps. And I think we're going to talk a little bit further about why people don't come forward. There's a lot of reasons why people don't speak up. But I feel like with the civil rights movement, that wasn't just a black issue. Holocaust it's not just a Jewish issue. And I feel like with sexual harassment, this is not just a female issue. This is a community issue. And I feel like it is a prime opportunity and a very important moment in our history to really use the momentum that we have so far with this issue and continue to shine the light on it.
I feel we have to reshape the mindset of how humans interact with each other.
Absolutely.
And up the level of respect. I'm a joker. I joke around a lot. I may crack a joke that occasionally may be on the borderline, but I don't mean to offend necessarily.
Sure.
I just mean to have some
Right.
spice in life, but not to harm somebody or traumatize somebody.
Sure.
So how do we prevent that?
Well, first thing is it's important to have a clear definition on what it looks like, right? And I think what's happened, in especially men don't know how to act anymore. They're afraid to go out for lunch with a female coworker. They're afraid to compliment a woman's suit because they're afraid they're going to cross the line.
Right.
So I feel like education is critical. So
So
the definition, according to EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, sexual harassment is any unwanted behavior of sexual nature or conduct that directly impacts the person's ability to do their job, which creates a hostile environment.
So let's understand this for lay people. So if you're impeded, if you feel uncomfortable doing your job, then it could be construed as a sexual harassment
Absolutely.
issue.
So let's talk further about the definition, right? So there's many different kinds of ways to harass someone. And I feel like now that internet is mainstream in our lives, it creates a lot of different mediums and ways for people to harass. So there's two main types. There's quid pro quo, which is this for that, right? So, and typically, the harasser is in a position of power. They're either in a manager or in management, right? So if you do X, Y, and Z sexual nature, you will get your promotion.
That's very clear and obvious.
Right?
I mean, I really think that our audience is going to
Sure.
understand that.
That's quid pro quo. That's important to understand. Then there's also hostile environment. And hostile environment is inappropriate touching, inappropriate gestures, inappropriate looks or stares, staring up and down someone in a sexual way.
Is that
But I
subjective, though?
feel like it has to be, there's two components to this. If a case ever ended up in the courts, they're going to want to know two things. They're going to want to know, was it severe? And they're going to want to know, was it pervasive? Okay? So the key thing to hear is if someone does something once inappropriately, we're not going to go and quickly define it as sexual harassment in the workplace, okay? But it could be considered if it creates a hostile environment. Something can happen once and have a trickle effect. The point being is it has to have a direct impact on the victim. It has to affect their ability to do their job. Some people start calling out sick. Some people ignore certain daily tasks because they don't want to come across that person or they want to come in contact. So the full picture, you have to look at the full picture.
Okay.
One isolated incident isn't considered sexual harassment unless it creates a hostile environment situation.
So a guy or a girl can ask someone out. Do you want to go out for drinks?
Right.
Or I like you. Do you want to
Right.
hang out?
So let's play that out, right?
Okay.
So assuming the man asks the woman out, the woman says no. He persists. He keeps asking.
Well-
He now sends emails. He comments on her body. He comments on, oh, I'm going to treat you well and I'm going to do this if I take you out. He doesn't stop at no.
So what are other parameters for this?
So again, I think the key thing here is the severity of the situation. If you're unsure about whether or not something is appropriate or inappropriate, I really encourage people to utilize the resources on the internet. I would encourage you to seek legal counsel, free consultation.
There's a lot of stuff on the internet. It's like too much
It is.
information. But you mentioned bystander intervention. What is that?
Sure. So this is really interesting because, going back to my comment before, we have human resources, we have laws and regulations in place, but why is this still an issue? I personally believe that there's a lot of reasons why people don't stand up and speak up, right? The victim oftentimes feels intimidated. They have fear that they're going to lose their job. There's going to be some form of retaliation.
So bystander intervention is...
But I'm just kind of talking a little bit more about the victim here and why they don't stand up. And we are finding that the more people involved, the higher the chance and the higher the likelihood that the victim will feel empowered to create change and to speak up.
Okay.
There's been a lot of studies around bystander training, and I think this is perhaps the missing link in sexual harassment training at companies. We always talk about what's appropriate, like you even made a comment. We know what's appropriate.
What I'm saying is bystander. What does that mean? Someone onlooking, two people having a conversation.
Absolutely.
So a coworker or maybe a surveillance camera.
So we're having a board meeting, right? And there's a couple of people in the room, mixed of men and women.
Right.
And again, for argument's sake, we're going to make the woman the victim. A man comments on a woman's breasts. So a bystander would be somebody in that conference room that overheard or saw that interaction.
Right.
Now, most people mind their business, right? They kind of let it go. Some people laugh it off when they get nervous. They don't know what to do, basically. Most people do nothing, right? So the whole concept behind bystander intervention is when other people get involved, it gives the victim borrowed hope, motivation, it provides accountability, and sometimes all it could take is a male to say, that was not a very appropriate comment you made in the conference room.
But anybody could say that to somebody else.
Anybody can, but the point is speak up.
Kind of helping improve the standard. Okay,
Absolutely.
So that's what bystander intervention is.
Yes.
So we encourage our coworkers to speak up, but kindly. You don't have to
You're
give it to
setting the
somebody.
tone and you're letting them know that you don't think it's appropriate, okay? And the whole notion behind bystander intervention is the behavior of the perpetrator, we have found, is directly impacted by the reactions of the people around them.
So we have to pay attention to that.
So we have to pay attention
Thank
to
you.
that. I feel like this is perhaps the missing link to sexual harassment training at the workplace, we always focus on empowering the victim and getting the victim to speak up. But the reality is most victims don't speak up. I believe the statistics that we have are not fully accurate. I feel like there are probably many more people that want to speak up that don't because of fear of retaliation, fear of losing their job, fear of the stigma around being a victim of sexual harassment. So I believe that the missing piece to this is educating everybody in the workplace on what part they can play in helping the victim. We find that bystander training is important because it gives everybody the responsibility to become the solution in this problem. And we also find, and when I talk about bystanders, I'm talking about witnesses, I'm talking about people that...
Co-workers.
Co-workers, right.
Around
People that are in your
observe.
environment. Exactly. Like, for instance, you're in a boardroom and there's a mix of men and women. And, again, for this argument's sake, I'm going to make the victim a woman. A man will make a comment about a woman's figure, and it's of sexual nature. And typically, if you observe people in a group setting, people get quiet, their body language change, they get squirmish, but
Right.
a lot of people don't stand up and speak up. So the missing piece to this, I think, is that people that witness or are privy to sexual harassment occurring in the workplace, it has now become the responsibility of everybody to speak up, because we find that a bystander gives the victim borrowed hope, borrowed motivation,
Yes.
as well as accountability. And
Right.
we find that also too, in talking about the perpetrator, bystanders typically will, we've also noticed that, the behavior and actions of a perpetrator is directly affected by how people react to their behavior. So if people stay silent, what is that message sending? Right? So I truly believe this is not just a victim issue. This is a community issue.
And we need employee training too, like diversity training courses.
So you bring up a great
companies-
point, right? So most corporations, I think the law is if you have more than 5 employees, you have to offer sexual harassment training. And what's happened, and listen, the internet is a wonderful thing, but what's happened is companies have, decided to utilize these online courses, which are inexpensive, which are extremely efficient, right? You basically send your employee a link, a WebEx link. You log on at your desk, at your home. You watch a very dry, boring PowerPoint presentation,
Okay.
right? And then you answer a bunch of questions that a 5-year-old could probably answer. And then the company can check the box off and they feel good that that person has been trained.
Is that effective?
It has been proven to be extremely ineffective. And
Ineffective.
I'll
So
tell you why.
We need in-person, live
It's impersonal.
communication. We need
There's
to,
no interaction,
right.
right? And there's no accountability. And I feel like although the internet offers efficiency, offers, better pricing for companies, and it's just easier, especially for remote sales force.
Sure.
I-
But ultimately, it's not cheaper for companies if there's lawsuits
Well, guess
that they've
what?
got to defend.
Exactly right. And you know what? Live trainings isn't that much more
And
expensive.
it's fun, and it could boost morale,
Yes.
and it can help your workplace improve dramatically, right?
What has been shown and proven in studies, there's been some recent studies, and the research shows that the best platform and forum for sexual harassment training is small group, under 20, 25 people, and you do employee training and management training, but not only sexual harassment training, but bystander training as well.
Bystander
Everybody plays a role in this.
Wow, I really want to thank Taryn Abrahams for giving great information. I've learned so much today as a man to improve the workplace. And when we improve it together, we create an efficient environment, we create opportunities to generate more income, to provide for our families, and have just a great community together. Thank you.